Am I my brother's keeper? Yes, I am. Am I my brother's keeper? Yes, I am. Am I my brother's keeper? Yes, I am.
Why are people underestimating Jarret Hurd? Hey y'all, this Nino Brown Boxing. Shout out to the LDBC. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Man, this stuff has been on my mind ever since that decision has been announced for Jarret Hurd to become the new unified champion at 154 pounds. Once again, congratulations to Jarret Hurd. Congratulations to Aristotle Laura for putting on a spectacular performance, definitely entertaining the fans, and definitely killing the narrative that he's a born fighter that's always in born fights. So, shout out to those guys. But, you know, at this point, the whole topic is what's next? What's next for Jarret Hurd? What's next for the junior middleweight division? Well, it's obvious at this point the only logical thing is for Jarrett Hurd and Jermell Charlo to fight, to unify, you know, that WBC, WBA, IBF, and the little IBO belt as well. Now I've been hearing a whole lot of people, and some people are making some, you know, some good points, and some people not so much. Now, some of the good points I've heard has been Jarret Hurd's going to have to work on his defense. I definitely agree. The fact that he's taking shots and he's using his granite chin as one of his defensive tools is going to severely limit his longevity in the sport, and I agree with that as well. But if we're talking about his next fight, I don't feel like that's going to be a factor at this moment in time. A lot of people are forgetting Jarret Hurd has not been boxing since he was 8 years old like the Charlos. He's learning on the job, comparable to a guy like Deontay Wilder. You know, people talking about Hurd doesn't have power, but he set Laura on his ass, something Canelo couldn't do. So it's just like, you know, people are making certain points about Hurd, and they're trying to downplay the man's skill set. They're trying to downplay his ability. But, you know, you have guys out there that are on record. I believe it was Tony Harrison said that Jarret Hurd basically has a certain level of will that he's never seen in the ring before. And we all know how that is. You know, we got guys out there like Victor Ortiz that are mentally weak. You got guys like Adrian Broner that seems like he's mainly focused on styling and looking cool in the ring. And then you have a guy like Jarret Hurd with a will that can't be unbroken. Honestly, if I was to compare it, not comparing the two fighters, please don't get my message misconstrued. But at this point, it feels like Jarret Hurd is establishing a will. He's building up to a will that's comparable to an Andre Ward inside the ring, someone that can overcome adversity and overcome all odds. Now, when it gets to the whole Jermell Charlo thing, like, let's be clear. The Charlos are, because I paired them together. I know they're two different men. I know they're two grown men. They're brothers or twins, but I was introduced to them as twins. So Errol Spence is my favorite fighter, hands down. The Charlos, they fall right underneath Errol Spence. Now, I am a huge fan of Jarret Hurd as well. You know, he's a hometown guy for me from the DMV. So I'm going to ride with this guy. But it's not just the fact that he's a hometown guy. It's just also I see something in Jarret Hurd. I see a person that has a strong will, that's mentally tough, someone that can definitely fight through adversity. And it's just, I don't know, it's just somebody that knows his flaws. He has no issues with pointing it out, and he's slowly improving. You know, a lot of people aren't paying attention to the resume that Jarret Hurd has built up in his last 3 fights. People always say styles makes fights. Well, let's look at it like this. Jarret Hurd is a pressure fighter. He's a pressure fighter that has a lot of defensive flaws. So if you have that type of fighter against a technically sound, accurate puncher, that is a stylistic nightmare. So he started off this journey when he fought Tony Harrison. You know, he was getting outboxed and he caught Harrison. Now the whole thing is, oh well, Hurd doesn't have power. I was like, okay, well, people will respond, well, Harrison doesn't have a chin. I'm like, okay, whatever. He stops Harrison. Then next, he steps up in competition. He fights Austin Trout. He fights in Austin Trout. You know, he's been in there with Jermell Charlo, the bigger puncher Charlo. The Austin Trout that's been in there with Canelo. Austin Trout that's defeated Cotto. Someone that's a southpaw with superior boxing ability compared to Jarret Hurd. Compared to, honestly, if you think about it, Austin Trout has superior boxing ability compared to anyone on Jermell Charlo's record. So, you know, you put her in the ring with Jermell, and I mean, you put her in the ring with Austin Trout. Hurd, you know, he had a good outing for himself. Yes, he was a pressure fighter. Was he getting hit? Yeah, absolutely. But he showed improvement, and he showed improvements in the Austin Trout fight compared to the Tony Harrison fight. What did he do? He stopped Austin Trout. Something the big puncher Charlo couldn't do. Now, I'm not going to say, well, since Jermell Charlo couldn't stop Austin Trout, that doesn't mean Jermell can't stop Austin Trout. I'm not going to say that, because they're different people. I get it. But, you know, the consensus when it comes to the Charlo twins, the harder hitting Charlo is definitely Jermell. Jarret Hurd, he stopped him. Now, yes, was it later in his career? Absolutely. So could that have been a factor? Yeah, it definitely could have. But, you know, we never know for sure when it comes to that. But at the end of the day, Jarret Hurd got the job done against he got the job done against a superior boxer. That was a stylistic nightmare for him. Cool. Then what did Jarret Hurd do after that? He stepped up in competition again. He stepped up in competition again, and he fought Arislani Lara. A lot of people were counting him out, saying Lara was going to box his head off. Hey, Lara was in an exciting fight. You know, some people are trying to say Lara's legs were shot, this, and that. Trying to do everything to discredit Hurd's ability in the ring. Like, you know how they say you have talented boxers like Floyd Mayweather, when his defense pretty much slows down the offense of very active fighters. Well, what if that was the case for Jarret Hurd's pressure? What if Jarret Hurd's pressure has the ability to slow down a fighter with superior lateral movement and great defense? Let's not count Lara out, because he was just flying around the ring against his last fight when everyone said it was a snooze fest because all Lara did was move. So, you know, and he did that against an Olympian. Hurd is far from an Olympian. You know, he's a guy with a limited amateur career. But let's go on. Now, when it gets to this whole Jermell Charlo thing, a couple of points that I want to bring up. Once again, I'm not trying to discredit Jermell Charlo whatsoever. But my issue is that people are trying to downplay Jarret Hurd's ability. They already did it once. They did it multiple times against Austin Trout and against Lara. So the thing about it is, let's take these factors into consideration. At this point in time in Jermell Charlo and Jarret Hurd's career, Jarret Hurd has more ring experience. He has the tougher resume. He's fought the better competition. All of those are facts. Now, we also have to take into consideration that, you know, Charlo, he knocked Lubin out in the first round. And Lubin, at that point in his career, you know, he was hyped up as a young prospect that could get the job done. People were counting Jermell out. Now, me personally, I thought that was very disrespectful to treat Jermell Charlo that way when it came to a young, unproven fighter like Lubin. But Lubin isn't Jarret Hurd. Lubin hasn't been in the ring with Austin Trout. Lubin hasn't been in the ring with Arislani Lara on the big stage. See, I see another point a lot of people try to take in. They try to bring the whole thing in about Jermell Charlo sparring his brother, Jermell Charlo sparring Errol Spence on a daily basis. Like, I understand, and that's great preparation. That's why I say this is a 50-50 fight. But we all know that when you're under the lights and the pressure is on and there's no coming back from that, Jarret Hurd has been in those situations. See, a lot of people, they're not bringing up the fact that John Jackson was up on the scorecards against Jermell Charlo until Jermell Charlo caught him what? I believe it was either, I can't remember the punch. I was just watching the fight the other night after the fights from this weekend. But Jermell Charlo caught John Jackson. He hurt his eye, and John Jackson, for whatever reason, he turned his back on Jermell. Now, John was up on the scorecards. We can go back and check. I remember that part very vividly because I was rooting for Jermell in that fight. But John Jackson was up on the scorecards. He turned his back and he got knocked out. He was outboxing Jermell that fight. Now, some people can say, well, he just moved over to Derrick James. He was getting acclimated to a new trainer. All of that may be true. And once again, that's why I'm simply saying this is a 50-50 fight. Counting Jarret Hurd out and saying that Charlo's going to run through him. If anything, it's going to be a tough fight that if anyone gets stopped, it will be in the late rounds. I don't see any early stoppages. I don't see any mid-round stoppages. I don't see Jermell Charlo bodying Hurd. I see it being a pressure fighter going against a fighter like Jermell Charlo that's a tactician. Jermell Charlo is not going to come out here guns blazing. He's not going to come out here extremely aggressive. A lot of people want to talk trash about Jarret Hurd and say that he doesn't have the power. But when was the last time we seen Laura sat on his ass? Laura doesn't get knocked down that much. He has a good chin, and arguably he should be undefeated. So all of this talks about Jarret Hurd not having power, but he knocked down Laura. He knocked down Austin Trout. He stopped Austin Trout. And he knocked out Tony Harrison. Now, when you put a guy in the ring against opponents that are a stylistic nightmare, someone that's quote-unquote doesn't have power and doesn't have the best defense, hey, those type of outcomes shouldn't be happening. Now, I truly believe it's going to be a hell of a fight. I'm not picking either guy right now at this point. I feel that I need to go back and do more research and see before I can make me an educated opinion on the matter. But if you're gonna count out Jarret Hurd, you're absolutely crazy. You still we need to remember that Aristotle Laura and the Charlos, they trained together. They did the damn thing in the gym for years. Aristotle Laura helped groom the Charlos into the champions that they are today. Honestly, even though Jermell is further on in his career, I feel like it's disrespectful to Laura to assume that Charlo would beat Laura. It's just one of those things where a lot of people are getting ahead of themselves. And I think we need to all put this into perspective. First of all, Hurd is a light heavyweight at 154 pounds. Now, some people may categorize that as a weight bully. I just look at that as a fighter, a young guy that has the discipline to keep his weight down. Now, I've seen Charlo in between fights. I've seen my boy Spence in between fights. They all, their faces get fat, and you can tell that they're putting on weight. Now, I follow Jarret Hurd on Instagram. I've seen him in between fights on numerous occasions, and I've never see this guy appear to be well above 154 pounds for someone with that frame. You have a dude that's 6'1 plus. He has a tall frame, but he has those broad shoulders. Like Jarret Hurd could easily walk around at 200 pounds, no problem. So it's just one of those things. A lot of people are not really taking into consideration. Jarret Hurd is a very disciplined fighter. He's a gym rat, and he's well conditioned. Yes, we all understand that Charlo spars with Errol Spence. He's getting that good work. Prior to that, he was sparring with Laura and his brother. We get it. But all of that information is publicized because those guys they're mainstream boxers. we don't really know what work Jarret Hurd is getting. We don't know who he has in his camp. I know he has a younger brother, Justin Hurd, that's also a young prospect at 154 pounds. I'm sure he gets good work from his brother as well. But we also have to take into consideration, just because a guy is inspiring household names, that doesn't mean he's not getting great work. That doesn't mean that his coaching isn't as good as the next guy. Obviously it is. He was able to take out Laura, and it's all working for him. I just feel like we all just need to put some things into perspective. This is a 50-50 fight. I want the fight. I don't want Jarret Hurd to start playing politics and start talking about, yeah, I'm the A side, this, and that. I don't want to hear it. But on another hand, now if Jermell Hurd feels like he wants to tune up fight before Jermell Charlo, me personally, I'm okay with that. Because Jermell Charlo even said it himself. He felt like he deserves a tune-up fight, and he's had tough competition back-to-back. But it hasn't been Arislandi Lara, Austin Trout tough competition. When Jermell Charlo was saying that about, his next opponent, he wants a tune-up. So how come the unified champion can't receive the same courtesy? Now, ideally they will fight 3 times this year. I don't know when Jarret Hurd plans on coming back. This is April now, May, June, July. He fights. They both, put on the fight. Jarret Hurd fights in the summertime, and they put, the WBC, WBA, IBF, and IBO belt on at the end of the year. I'm okay with that. I have no problem whatsoever with these two guys taking a tune-up fight in between. Honestly, I feel like Jarret Hurd needs to fight an opponent, a great opponent for him to fight. For me, I think if Willie Nelson was active, and last I checked he wasn't, it would be a great barometer test. He needs to fight a person that has, good skill, but they don't have a problem banging with him. He needs to fight a banger. He needs to fight a hard puncher that has some ability, because he's already prepared himself when it comes to the technical aspect of Jermell Charlo. I don't see how Jarret Hurd can prepare more when it comes to the technical side, more so than Austin Trout and Arislandi Lara. Now he needs to just implement a power puncher, a person with knockout capabilities, but they still have some movement and some good athleticism. If Jarret Hurd is to implement that and for his next opponent, and at the end of the year, him and Charlo, they decide to unify, I think it's going to be a fireworks fight. I think both guys will be well prepared, and we'll see who's the best guy at 154 pounds division, to see if they can convince Saddam Ali to get his scary ass in the ring. But that's just my take on it. This is Nino Brown Boxing. Shout out to the LDBC. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Peace.